We are going to continue now with that section in the prophet Jeremiah in the 12th chapter, verse 9. This will be called Jeremiah 2, and it will be, of course, in the Bible folder. Now, before we go to any more of the Acuff song, I think it's important, though, to get some idea of that particular verse about that bird or speckled bird, and you know how many names it got. We said that before. We should actually give you a context in which this happened. Now, for example, one way to do that is to take the Thompson Chain Reference Bible, which I have here, which is absolutely gigantic, as you can see. And what it does when you go to chapter 12, especially where verse 7 begins, it shows you all along the side all of those comments that give you an idea of what's going on in there. For example, what you will see in there often are things like, let's say in verse 7, desolation, wicked, forsaken, reproachable, blasphemy, instruments of judgment, unfaithful ministers, moral vineyard, desolation, indifference, sword of God, no peace, sin's harvest, disappointments, sin unprofitable, wicked ashamed, wages, God's anger, and so forth. And one thing also to know in here, when you see all that in this Bible, then you can go to the page where those notes have numbers and get details of it in other scripture. And that is helpful because what it is showing in there is the context in which all of this happens. And what is going on in this is in Jeremiah's work with Judah, especially, because some of it has been destroyed already. And there are kings and rulers in these regions that sometimes take the side of the Egyptians that are trying to destroy Judah and stick with them to get what they want. And those that don't stick with them often are killed or chased or gotten to switch their allegiance to another. Now, the thing we have to do before we actually go into what that bird, that winged bird or vulture bird or speckled bird, what it is and what it's doing. So the best way to do that is actually to read some of that scripture so you get an idea of what was going on. And they will mention Baal, Baal. That was a Phoenician god that some of the Israelites worshiped, and it was an idol. So what was happening here, Israel, or one part of it, was worshiping an idol from another country. That was idolatry. That was complete wrong worship. And Israel, when it does that, is under God's anger. So you can count on that being the case. Now, when we read, I think the best one to start with, to actually read all of it, just that much, is the one by Robert Alter, who is the great Jewish scholar who wrote these books here. And this one is on the prophets, as you can see, the prophets. And if we open up here to Jeremiah, then we'll begin to read some of that the next time. Now, we're going to start with verse 6, and then we'll go from 7 to about 13. And then we can read some of his notes next. So I think the best reading will come from the Jewish scholar who has the best translation of this because of his worthiness to the Jewish language. So when we come next, we will do this section right here from Robert Alter book, and then we will take a look at one or two of his notes. So to get the context, before we get to the Acuff song, so you'll know what he makes of this large speckled bird, this will give you some idea of what's going on.